if a business doesn't have a clear path for growth and they're going, well, we can grow by like 5 to 20% a year, or we can double through acquisitions, that seems to make sense, right? If you've already got a path, like we're already growing at a substantial clip, we could probably triple or more in the next, we have control over our growth at the moment, put it that way, right? And so we can grow significantly. Is it more of a case of like, it's probably more appropriate when you don't already have some kind of rocket ship underneath you? Is that like, because it kind of seems like could accidentally overcook it a little bit.
Yeah, it has to do with your operational capacity, certainly your team, but they're not mutually exclusive. And think about Google was growing like crazy, and then they bought the AdWords company, right? It wasn't called AdWords. I forget what the name of it was, but they didn't have that capacity. It wasn't a core strength, but it was clearly a major monetization play that changed their business forever. They chose, rather than to develop outside their core competency, despite the fact that people were searching like crazy and their business was growing, to acquire a company that could really add tremendous value to them. Facebook was growing like crazy, has kind of grown like crazy since it started. And yet they chose to buy Instagram. They chose to buy WhatsApp, right? At $1 billion a pop. Google also chose to buy YouTube, right? Again, not a core capacity. Now the second largest search engine. So if you just like, those are two companies that I think are great examples because they were absolute rocket ships going in far faster than 2 or 3 times a year. But they did say along the way, you know what? We're not going to get where we want to get as fast if we try to do this. We're not going to get into this other market if we try to do this ourselves. We're not going to be able to develop this technology. Google, interestingly enough, tried to with Google Video to develop the video technology and compete head-to-head with YouTube, but they didn't have the ability to do it even with all their resources. So they just bought it, right? So I think that if you think that I can still grow my business at 3x, but what if I go exponential and I grow at 3x myself through organic or through whatever the current plan is, but then I multiply that by a force multiplier of 3 again, and now I'm exponentially greater, right? I'm not 3x, I'm 3 squared. So I'm going to grow 9 times as fast instead of 3 times as fast. I like 9 better than 3. Does it take more effort and resources to do it? Absolutely. But if I can do both, I'm going to do both. But what if I can't? What if I can only do the 3x or I can add the 3x? Then I'm going to basically say, well, if I can only do one, then which one is the easiest and most efficient and adds the most potential future value? And then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Yeah, because I think it's the resource. I think it's the resource component, and resource being time, money, team. All of the different factors that make it capability. I think it's the resource thing which I find interesting. As a company, we have been self-funded, so we haven't taken outside investment. Growth eats profits is a pretty common saying, and so like it's the dichotomy that I'm looking at is it's that trade-off between the excitement of like, yeah, we could go do this thing, and it's like, how much more, rattling and shaking can this rocket ship kind of take in a context? So I think and it could just be a limiting belief factor that I've got on it, that I'm not thinking about it correctly. And so I kind of want to think that.
I think it is a limiting belief because other people do it. And so we know that it's possible and that it's even probable because lots of people are doing it right now. So how are they doing it? Growth eats profits if growth is not controlled. But if a profitable company works with another profitable company or works with a company to acquire a company that is going to enhance profits because there are additional products or services that can be offered. There's additional IP that can be deployed. There's additional team or resources or acqui-hires that can take the capacity that needs to happen, or there's additional lead flow that comes in that can light on fire the proven product market fit things that we've already got, then it's kind of hard for profit to get eaten because we've built in a pre-profitable acquisition. And we've got a plan as to how the acquisition is going to enhance the profits we've already got. So I think it's scary, no question. And I think that's what you've got is like, man, I'm busy. I'm already fully busy. And it might not be the time for you to acquire, because you might need to say, how can I free up capacity for me to pursue this new growth channel? And that would be very smart to think about. I do believe that it is possible for you to free up time to pursue the additional growth channel. And I think that you would absolutely have fun with it, and it would absolutely benefit the company, because you're not going to buy anything that's not profitable. It's not like you're buying a startup or you're making an investment in some new expansion that you don't know if it's going to work or not. You're going in buying into momentum and profit. It's kind of hard to lose if you're going into already proven profit and momentum, and, to use a very overused corporate word, true synergy, so that the companies are actually going to come together and be more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, it's super interesting. The thing that I'm thinking about, so two thoughts sprang out of the back of that. Number one, you said controlled growth. That's really interesting as well, because we have a team that are focused on growth, right? And left unconstrained, they would just be like, foot to the floor, let's go, which is fun. But then but if we put a constraint on that and said, okay, we might be able to grow by whatever X% a month, but let's target this. We're just going to do this much growth every month. So it's consistent. We can probably do more than that, but that's cool. Let's keep some headroom. Let's create some emotional space around that as well, as much as anything else. And just go, okay, let's just do that. And if we can do more, that's cool, but let's just constrain it a little bit. And then also creating a team. So building a specific team for it, like having someone for the acquisition side, by the way. So having someone who can kind of champion that and lead that. And I think that kind of gets into a point that you often talk about, is like, obviously not being the operator. You talk about the O myth as well. And if you think about the acquisition, and maybe it is structurally, and maybe you can shed some light on that, kind of the way I'm thinking about it is you might create a separate department / a separate business unit / potentially a separate business entity, which is focused on the specific growth through acquisition, CFE type stuff. And then you would have someone who would be focused on operating that company. And therefore, my role, for example, would be to provide strategic advisory to that company, and by proxy, strategic advisory to the acquisition. So create that, find a champion, an operator or whatever, help them to have the resources they need to build the team that is required for them to develop the deal flow that can then feed into the other companies. Am I thinking about that in the right way? I feel like I'm stuck.
Yeah, I think you are. And keep in mind, there's a lot of M&A professionals who are currently unemployed because we're in a downturn economy where private equity is constricting a bit. Companies are rethinking their teams and things like that. And so to find somebody that's got skills in the area of doing acquisitions, at least traditionally, shouldn't be that hard. Although, I don't think you need somebody like that, but like if you wanted to hire an M&A team, that is definitely something you could do. I just think that if you go with what would have to be true for me to be able to do this? And the answer is I would need to have 10 more hours a week, and my team would have to be twice as efficient, or these KPIs would have to look like that. Then you say, okay, what's going to get me to that place as fast as possible? And then you put that into place, and then you do it. And I wouldn't suggest that you say, let me take my hands off the wheel of this business that's going great and growing at 3x to do this other thing, and just assume that everything's going to go fine and it's going to continue to do that, because it probably won't. But you might want to be thinking about, how constrained am I if I don't find a way to make that happen? Because at some point I'm already full, and it's probably now. And so if I'm already operating at 20% over my ideal capacity, then what would be true is I've got to find capacity. So how do I do that? What would have to be true for me to be able to get somebody to do the things that I'm doing to get me back to 70%? And then put that in place as step one. And then step two is go and start a programmatic M&A.